God, and we can gather as a family of believers with our family. And God, we can learn from your word, we can learn from you, and we can learn from each other. And so, God, we just ask you to be in this place. We ask you to fill this place. Lord God, we ask you this morning to anoint Mark and Dawn in their lips, Lord, as they speak to us, as they teach us, as they share love with us this morning. We ask this in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, Amen. Amen. Take it away. I'm full of different random songs today.
Yeah. That's exciting. Good morning, everybody. Got the microphone. Yes, I know it. What were we talking about? The love languages. Right. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I know what we're talking about. And I know everybody knows my lovely wife, Dawn. And we're here to talk about the love languages. Now, the first thing I do want to mention is that in no way, shape, or form are we any kind of experts or really anything at all. What? Oh, hold it closer. Okay. I was going for the effect. All right. Okay. Not experts, but what we want to do is just present some of the information in the book and maybe throw in just a few of our examples, because we have some. All right. Well, I guess, okay. You want to test a marriage? Yeah, do a teaching together. No, that's not true. We're having a great time. So in talking about the 5 love languages, Dr. Chapman started this out for marriages specifically. Then it carried over into singles and teens and everybody. And it comes down to how we relate to people in our various relationships. And each one is going to be a little bit different. He talks in the book. Do I not have the book? I got it, hon. So I can reference it. If I look at it, then I can remember what's in it. He talks about, that we start out with our parents and getting love from our parents. And then it goes from there, different relationships, friendships, boyfriend, girlfriend type things, marriages, kids, all of that. And the languages apply. They apply in all situations. We are going to, I don't know if the correct word is use them differently or apply them differently in those different relationships. And that's what we want to talk about. And we want to, include everybody, married, single folks, young people, but there's a lot of information. It's pretty broad. So I'm just going to get in and start talking about it. Starting out with talking about in marriages, the key here is to learn your spouse's love language. Yes, that is what you want to do, and we have to be conscious in doing that. Now, to apply that in other relationships, we want to learn other people's love language as well. It's a good idea to maybe learn your boss's love language, if they have one. Anyway, you know how it is. But it's not so much as we talk about just like romantic love. It's all different kinds of those relationships. Now, in the English language, we have the word love. That's what we talk about. Love, 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 right? And it covers a lot of ground. In the Greek, there's 8 words for love. 4 of those are used in the Bible that a lot of us are familiar with. The eros, philos, what's that important? Oh, agape. Yeah, that one. And then there's the family love, which is storge. That's in the Bible as well. Then there's 4 more. Playful, flirting. I'm not saying it in the Greek, obviously. Long-standing love, self-love, and obsessive. Whoa. Yeah, I know. So, in other languages, they use various words to describe the different types of relationships. And I don't know if we would call them levels of love or just different types of love. But in our language, it's love. That's what we talk about, and how to relate to people. Now, when we are, let's say, getting to the point where we start dating other people, we start getting into relationships, and we fall in love, right? Some folks here, I can tell as I look around, some folks remember what that was like. And in the book, he mentions it lasts about 2 years when folks get married, roughly. That's what he says in the studies. I'm just going to go with what he says. That's awesome. But what we find out, especially in marriage, is that there is work involved. We use that term work, and that means being intentional, relating to another person. When all of a sudden those love goggles are removed, and the little things that they did that didn't bother us before, now they annoy us. And right on the, yeah. Okay, let's talk about that. Shall we? Yeah. No. And it's interesting because I remember what it was like. I remember explaining to Dawn back before we were married, hon, listen, you know how there's people that like to hunt and fish once in a while and do that? Well, I do it a little more. I do it a lot. Oh, that's okay. That's fine. Then, a few years down the road, there's something all year long. It goes from one thing to another. You're either fishing or you're hunting for this, and then springtime and there's turkey. And and it never ends. Yeah, it never ends. I told you that before we got married. Doesn't matter, right? Yeah. And she might have mentioned something to me too. I can't quite call, but oh, it's amazing. But once we become intentional with it, now we've got the little test things to learn our love languages. It's not difficult. It's pretty cool. When I took it, I went through, and I had two. I had words of affirmation and quality time, both tied for first. I don't know if that's different or unique, but for me, I'm pretty much sure it's words of affirmation kind of edges the quality time out. And for Dawn, it's acts of service. And so it's interesting, as I've been studying to do this these past few weeks, I've done the dishes a lot more. Yeah. Because it's the small things. I do a little few of those, and she's happy. And wow, why is she so happy? Well, you did the dishes, Now, the one thing I want to mention before going on is having an agenda when we do those. Meaning, well, I'll do the dishes so that she... right? Or I'll say something nice so that, and when we are not doing it in a genuine fashion, that comes through. That does. And we have to be aware of that we are doing it to express love, not get something. There's a big difference there. And that's something that we want to pay attention to. Just a couple quick quotes from the book. The whole falling in love, he mentions in here, the little traits that we overlooked when we were in love now become mountains. And on page 31, he says, the bad information was the idea that the in-love obsession would last forever. And I think that when we do marriage counseling and we talk with people, that's one of the big things we want to talk about. But most of the time, none of us listen at the time that we're in love anyway. But any of us can start learning these. We can start working towards it. It is not, I would say, extremely difficult. And especially if we're working towards developing relationships, again, whether it's marriage, dating, friendship, working relationships, there can be improvement with that. All right. Your turn. I'm sure I'll be back, though.
Proverbs 15:1. Oh, Proverbs 15:1. If we want to turn there really quick, we can, or get it off our phones. And the reason why we're looking at that is just for the next segment. And one of the things Mark was talking about is for the singles, there's this book out there. I don't know if you've seen it or not. There's this one out there for singles, and we have the love language book that Mark was referencing. But we're going to look at words of affirmation and what that's all about. Have you guys heard about that or thought about what words of affirmation is? Anybody have any? What are words of affirmation while we're looking up the scriptures? Anybody from the group? Anybody? No?
You're doing a great
Okay. Good application there. Good. All right. So Proverbs 15:1. Now, I like this scripture because there's so many things to look at it when you're reading it. I just got to get to it. So just sorry, guys. I don't have it marked. That was silly. Okay. So it says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. So a soft word, and so if this is your love language, so if you're thinking about and we're going to go through them, we have 5 weeks, and so we're going to break down each one. But this one is words of affirmation. And looking at it and saying, okay, is this mine? Do I feel good when somebody says a compliment to me? Or do I feel encouraged? And the thing about with the singles and with the children are very, very important in your home, right? And so if love language is their love language, if words of affirmation is their love language, then we got to be careful what we're saying to our kids, right? We should always be careful. But when it comes to if acts of service is maybe not theirs and the other ones aren't theirs, but words of affirmation is, they got to hear good job or I love you. This book talks about a relationship with a guy named Brian in the words of affirmation chapter, and he was this man, and he was always just really stoic and coarse. He went to the military. He did all these things to try and please his dad. His dad worked hard to provide. His dad did all these things for him, but he never spoke the word I love you to his dad. He never did. But he was a good guy, and Brian was good. He did his job. He did everything he needed to do, but he was always searching for something, and he didn't know what it was. And he met with Mr. Chapman, and Mr. Chapman, said, well, let's talk about the different things. And it came to find that words of affirmation was what he's needing. And he was a single guy, and he was just working and doing all those things and doing all these things to try and get something that wasn't being met inside of him. Now, he was a Christian, and it's all those things, and we're all, when you have Jesus, of course, he's going to meet all your needs. This interrelationships that we have with one another that are important. And so when you recognize and see what the love language is in your kid or yourself or your loved one, you got to use those and ask the Lord, because maybe it isn't your gift to say those things. Because Brian's dad wasn't taught to say, I love you. He didn't hear that from his family. So that's 3 generations, grandma, Brian's dad, and Brian. That I love you was not used. And Brian needed that word of affirmation. So Gary Chapman recommended that whenever he talks to his dad on the phone, is to say, I love you. And what the dad was like, what'd you say? What is that? And then slowly but surely, this crevice came closer. And there was healing in a relationship, and the dad said it back to him after a few times. So sometimes these words of affirmation can be foreign to us. We're not used to it because we didn't hear it growing up, but it's something that we need. And God has designed us in all different ways to have our love languages be filled. It's always going to be filled by him, because he's our King of Kings and Lord of Lords over our life. And he knows what we need inside of us. And he knows how we can be restored and healed, but he uses people such as Gary Chapman to help us to see, oh wow, maybe I should say this more to my kid, or maybe I should say this more to my wife, or maybe I should say this more to my husband, or my bosses, my coworkers. If you have a boss that's really intense, you'll be like, hey, thank you for that task. They'll be like, well, oh, all right, no problem. She said thank you, or just even those simple words of saying nice, kind words are important, because it can really heal and restore relationships, and especially for our kids that need it when they're, if they're on the football field, I know we're in that time of season, are we saying, you should have done this better? I know that happened with one of our sons. He was all, his words of affirmation are his love language. And he was a junior when I married into the family. And so marrying a teenager is a lot of work, I'll tell you what. And I love my son. I have a grandma, Grayson and Maverick is his dad, or their dad. And words of affirmation is his love language. And I would be talking about that if he was sitting in here. I'd be letting him know. And he played football his senior year. And we would be like, you got to do this better. You got to do that better. And he didn't hear. And it was more of us like we wanted him to be successful. So we're saying, you just got to do this better and you got to do that better. Instead of hearing, wow, man, that was a good pass. Or that was a good touch, whatever he did. Because he was a bigger guy, so he worked the main line and would tackle people. I don't know what those are called, position, but I know it's something. And so he worked that line, and he was good at tackling, but I would always forget to say that instead of said, man, that guy got away from you, And it's not like an intentional thing. I had to learn later that he needed that word of affirmation, like, you did good, right? And we don't even think about it as parents sometimes. We're so busy saying this and that. We want them to be successful. We want them to be cute. And this is Nora, and say hi. Yeah, and so, she's my little love girl, and she's cute. Can you go sit with Papa for a little bit? No? You want to stand up here? You can stand up here. And so the main thing is just remember that. And so some things about words of affirmation can turn, though, and let me see what else I have. The key thing I have in my note I got out of this book, out of this chapter, is your tone as well, right? We all know about tones, especially in marriage. What's your tone? What's it doing? What's happening? And so tones are very important to know and to realize when you're upset or in an argument. That's the second part of this words of affirmation. Sometimes words of affirmation can come out in a very negative way. And you're saying things to your roommate, you're saying things to your loved one, you're saying things to your coworker, and it is not very fun, right? And so using a harsh tone word our harsh tone isn't good. Insults or criticisms, and they talk about it in the book for this words of affirmation, insults and criticisms and put downs in front of other people, like especially with the kids. You say, hey man, you put down your child in front of somebody. That's not good for them. It's not good for anybody. Or you put down your wife in front of, or your husband, or, we can talk about how, like, he told me he did hunt, right? I was raised very hippie. Like, we had salt licks out for the deer to come and lick the salt licks, but we would never kill them, Well, oh, look at the pretty deer and stuff, but we never would kill them. And so hunting was an epic for my life because I'm not a hunter. I've never shot anything in my life. Thank goodness I haven't hit a deer yet. I'm praying I never do. And so when we married, hold on, babe. When we married, we had to go sit with Papa. And when we married, we had to, sorry. So when we married, I was just amazed. He was always getting ready to go somewhere to do something. Like he's going to go shoot a deer, shoot an elk, get a bear, do all this stuff. And I'm just like, dude, can you hang out with me a little bit? Ooh, quality time is being missed, right? Or whatever. And so it's just an amazing thing that this book is a good book, and there's all these different things that are in there that can help you and stuff. Nora, yeah, I know. Okay. I'll forget for a minute. Okay. All right. All right. This is family. And so how are we using our words of affirmation for each other? And one of the things that happened is I had to communicate with Mark, and because I have a different kind of words of affirmation, because like Mark said, all these love languages are going to be used in your life at some point. It's those ones that are very, very important and valid to your life. There's the ones that are like filling up your love tank. And I like what Mark said as well, is about the agenda, right? Well, I'm going to do the dishes 50,000 times. My thing about the dishes is it has to be he wants to do the dishes. I don't want to be like doing the dishes. And that's such a silly thing, but it's like there's so many different things that are bigger and more important, but it's like, man, I get home from work, I'm tired, I got to cook dinner, I got to do this and I got to do that, and I don't want to do the dishes sometimes, and then he does them. But I do the dishes pretty much every day, except for when he does. Here, Nora, I'm going to put you down. Here. Okay. All right. You're getting heavy. All right. Okay. So does anybody have any thoughts so far about these words of affirmation? Have you had situations in your life, in your marriage, in your job, with your children, when you wish you could have said something? Or have you told, for those that are married, have you told your spouse, I think this is my love language? Have you been able to recognize that for yourself and say, words of affirmation are what I need? Have you been able to talk to a friend in confidence about, man, I think the love languages, I have my stepmom. So it's funny, she's my stepmom, but my dad has passed away, but she's still like a friend of mine. We kind of keep in touch. And so she's single, and I gave her this book, because she's, looking for a companion, and she's looking for things, and she wants these things done in her life. And she's not a Christian. So I was like, all right, Lord, do both. Find somebody, let her find you first, and then hopefully she can meet somebody, right? But this book is really encouraging because it talks about how, there's that in love, and we have this idea if I could just be in love and find somebody, and it's like, it's not all about that. It's about finding Jesus first, having a deep relationship with him, but then looking at, okay, it's not all about just that. There's way more to being a single person. And I remember I became a Christian, and I was single for like 10 or 12 years. I was like, whoa, what is this? Because I was not, I was never been married before I met Mark, but it was an interesting life being single and being a Christian, because everybody, it's all about marriage in the Bible sometimes, but actually there's a lot in there, about seeking God first and having those things. And so, when we're single, we have these opportunities to seek Jesus in a deeper way, and we have these opportunities to serve him in ways that, people with children can't serve, and people with, all these different things can happen. So learning about your love language as a single person is key. And knowing who you are, knowing your boundaries, and verbalizing and communicating those things. So if you don't have this book and you're single, please get it. It's really, I read both, I'd read the chapter 1 of this one and chapter 1 of the love languages for marriage. Because I wanted to compare, I wanted to see how different they were and how similar they were. And so there's some similarities. And so the next thing is, when we're talking about Brian in the book, he was talking about never getting compliments from his dad. And so that's also can be a detriment, and I talked about that with my child, and never saying thank you. Sometimes the simplest things can be used. And so as you see, I wrote this down for myself. As you can see, the not to-dos, things related to each love language is just as important, if not more important, than the do items. Because when we're not doing it, that gets missed. And we're doing it, it's just part of it, and it's fine, and it's fixable, and it's noticeable. But when we're not saying those things to our loved ones, whether it be our children, our coworkers, our friends, our family, our spouse, those are the things, that's when it's most noticeable. And so the second part of this, and says, it becomes negative interactions tend to have lasting impressions. It's crucial that you're aware of them. I might even venture to say that avoiding these things is more important than the things you choose to do. Right? So negative interactions, we tend to remember them more than we do the positive sometimes. Like I say a lot of things to my son, Darren, and sometimes I'm not doing enough. He's like, well, you don't do this, and you do this, and you do that, but I'm saying all these things. So then I look at what his second love language is. Like Mark talked about, he had the two that were tied. So think about, ask the Lord, saying, okay, Lord, you designed me. You showed me. What is mine? Maybe you don't know. I do have quizzes for singles, married, and children. We're going to hand them at the end so you can figure it out this week and look through it. But I think Mark has the second part of his segment.
All right. So one thing I wanted to talk about, Don had mentioned it, is the love tank. That's something he mentions in there, and I think it's a pretty good metaphor. I like thinking of it as oil in a car, not so much gas, but oil, because it doesn't need to be changed as often, but is very crucial. And if it doesn't get changed, well, the damage is huge. And there are some folks that maybe pay less attention to it than others. And it's like, oh, that little light, yeah, it's been on for a week. I don't know. Yeah, okay. So that's something to think about, is keeping someone's love tank full. And again, when it's not so much a marriage relationship, but a different one, it's not about keeping it full, but maybe, what would I want to say, it's just being aware of it, to allow somebody to experience something that might go into their love tank versus always something coming out. And keeping the love tank full is important. Dr. Chapman talks about how he sees a lot of folks, they're talking about, the struggles they have in their relationships, people that they know, and that the love tanks are empty. And that's what they're reaching out for, is wanting to have that. And it can be as simple as a compliment. It can be as simple as a small task for someone. And when we talk about these love languages and the things that go on in it, it's, again, the meaning behind it that, the thought that counts. When I first saw this, the whole issue of like gifts, that's one of the love languages. I was like, yeah, materialistic people. I'm not like that, right? But it's not about the object, it's what it represents, the thought that went into getting it, thinking of the person while doing it, preparing it, and then presenting it. I am not a very good gift giver. Now, in the whole test, I came up with a 1 for gifts. That's the bottom thing. I'm not very good at giving gifts. Usually when I think of something, I want to make a big surprise for Dawn. Like one time it was going to be Valentine's Day, and I was going to sneak into her work and decorate her office with hearts and everything like that, right? Turns out she didn't even go to work that day. And then another occasion, it seems to happen on Valentine's Day, I had bought a bunch of stuff, the hearts and flowery Valentine things, and I hid them in the back of the Tupperware cupboard where she never goes. Guess what she decided to clean out? Honey, what's all this stuff? I'm like, I can't believe you found it. Surprise! Yeah, I mean, that's just how it is when I attempt to give gifts. It's not always, that's just not my thing. And receiving gifts, that's another one where, it's like, yeah, hon, those are awesome binoculars, but they're not vortex binoculars. How do you explain? It's like, I'll get the things I want because I'm more about practicality, not so much in the issue of gifts and the meaning behind it. Paying attention to that is important, because if that is somebody's love language, a lot of times that's what they are going to speak to you. And for Dawn, I can't remember where on the list gifts are. It's low, right? Not quite as low as mine, but it's there. And you got to be aware of that. Then when somebody puts that kind of thought in there is meaning there, and that's what we're looking towards. Now, getting back to the whole words of affirmation, isn't it ironic that there's an example in the chapter in this book about a wife wanting her bedroom painted and the husband not doing it? And I thought, wow, how ironic. Yes, we just had a painting issue just recently. And what ends up happening is she talks with Dr. Chapman and they discuss it where maybe giving him some compliments might be good. And her statement was, well, how is that going to get my room painted? Right? But when we understand that and we speak someone's love language, what we find is they want to do stuff for us. Not because that's what we're looking for, but that's how relationships really work. There's a give and a take. It's a two-way thing. And when we talk about marriage, people say, 50-50. No, it's 100-100. Meaning we don't go into the relationship with what can we get from it. It's what can we bring to it. And it's amazing because then you get so much more back. So these love languages are I mean, they're pretty cool. I like the simplicity of them is what I really like. I like that I can, have that metaphor of a love tank. And when I think about it, I can tell when Don's love tank's getting a little low. What did we just have? Well, she just had a paper for school to do. And I know that that's going to create a little more pressure. And I thought of that in my head all by myself. I was like, yes, okay. So let's relieve a little bit of that pressure. And one of the things, she's pretty good at actually writing papers, but then I kind of went through and did a little editing to help out, to just kind of bounce ideas off and give some feedback. And paper's due tonight, and it's done. Yeah, and it was a really nice interaction that we had, and it counted on my side for quality time. So there's one episode of it worked out. I can give you a few more that don't work out all the time, but the painting, oh yeah. Yeah, thanks. Right, so this is an example of words of affirmation not being used. So we're painting the house, and the Don's just not quite getting it, not hitting all the spots. And so I go to redo the one room she did. I used the wrong paint, but she didn't tell me until I had just finished. And I'm in the closet finishing that up on a ladder. She explains it to me, and then she walked out of the room, and what she hears is the ladder going through the wall and all this commotion. Well, what had happened was I was upset trying to get off the ladder, and I falling off the ladder, and it hit against the wall in the closet. And then I'm pinned on this ladder in a closet, trying not to really fall and break the walls. And it was such a commotion. It was just absolutely terrible. Yes. And then I came out and I told her that, I said, you suck at painting. And I said it in a tone, and I was just blowing up. And yeah, here we go.
So the thing about this is I was like, I saw the white paint, and he's painting white on white, so it's like tones are a little different, but it's going to dry differently. I said, you have the wrong one. And I heard him in the closet when I told them, and I was laughing so hard about this. I ran out because I was like, oh my gosh. And then he comes out and tells me I suck at painting. And I was like, what? It just totally, I got very, very upset, but I was like, oh, he's just mad, I'll let it go. But we have worked it out, and I don't paint anymore inside. But,
yeah, her painting privileges are limited. But here's the thing, though. The whole thing, we're getting back to the love languages. That's what we got to talk about here, the love languages, not just how I'm an idiot. I wasn't using any words of affirmation, and I was actually using it as a weapon at that point, rather than what should have happened is when it first started with the whole painting thing, be like, hey, hon, listen, maybe we got to talk about this, and just discuss it, rather than let it go, try to cover it up, then have a big blow up, which kind of is my MO sometimes. Right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then, so in that process, the room, there was nothing in it. We had a couple camp chairs in there. That's all that was going on right then. And she was sitting in one of them, and I grabbed one, moved it across the room, and sat down. I wouldn't even say, I was acting like a total little kid. Really. It was just so funny. Yeah, and it's, and you'll find these are the kind of scenarios that most of the time I have to end up being in front of a church talking about them. That's the kind of accountability God feels that I need. That's awesome. So the words of affirmation are just so important, and they can be so simple, but having that genuineness behind them was what's important. Here's an example. I did a talk for work not too long ago to a bunch of our families. I work at a boys' rehab. And people were like, hey, good job. And like, yeah, thank you, okay. But I had one mom come up and she said this. She's like, you know what? I could listen to you talk all day. That's what she said. That one kind of hit home. I was like, wow, because I didn't feel it was just like an in-passing, ingenuine thing, that there was a little bit of thought to it. And I really took that as a compliment. I thought that was really nice. And that's one of those things, and it's mentioned in the book here. He quotes Mark Twain saying, I can go 2 months on a good compliment. That's what Mark Twain said. And he says, well, by that math, you only need 6 a year. I'm like, that's not bad. I'll take it, I mean, yeah, that works. Having those types of things is important. And a lot of times we don't even notice. We think it has to be something big, something, I'm struggling. I didn't have one ahead of time, something that I might have said that was complimentary to you. Yeah. Ooh, boy, maybe that's something I got to take a look at, right? Yeah. But again, it's more about acts of service, right? That's Don's number one. And so if I want to do something, then I'll take the garbage out. Sounds crazy and mundane, but that is the kind of thing, and if I keep that up. Because if I miss it, oh dear, right? We do have one other little tidbit that goes along with it. I'm not sure how it associates with this, but I'll be going to do something, like I'll be in the process of reaching towards the garbage to take it out, and she'll say, can you take the garbage out? Without even knowing. It happens all the time. And see, that's one of those things where, I love doing stuff, but then once she tells me or asks me, then it's like it's not the same, and I don't like doing it anymore. And it's like, oh. And so now we're at a point where it's like, I'll be doing it. She's like, oh, can you take the garbage out? And I'll be like, yeah, you did it again, hon. And she's like, I don't know, we must be on the same wavelength. Yeah. I'm like, well, that's one of those little annoying things that showed up after we got married. It's interesting, but it happens quite consistently. So I don't know where to go with that one. But anyhow, yeah.
We're going to talk about the quizzes.
Do we? Yeah, because are we almost done? 5 minutes? 9 minutes. Oh, that's forever. We are good to go. All right, you're going to pass out the quizzes?
Well, I'm going to talk about it.
Oh.
So
Do you want to take the mic?
You can hold it. In the back of the the pink book or purple book, there is the quiz. The single one doesn't have it, but I did print them all out for kids, singles, and adults, or couples, I should say, not adults. So basically, the purpose of this is to kind of see, if you don't know what your love language is to kind of see, oh man. And the questions are pretty simple. Does he take the dishes out? Yes or no? Do you like that, or do you like a compliment? That would be an example for yes or no for our situation. But so how many have actually taken one of these quizzes before? All right. So for those that have taken it before, kind of see if it's a little different. See what's changed for you over the years. That's the cool part, because we first got married, we did this, and we're like, oh, wow, we got a lot of similar ones. But now it's changed. We've been married 13 and a half years almost, right? Yeah, 13 and a half. So, yeah, woohoo. And so, just if you've taken this quiz before, compare it or try to remember, wow, it's changed, what's gotten better. And then what I recommend, is just praying about how to make sure your love tank stays full. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your loved ones, and saying, wow, man, this is where I'm at, with this. And those that have children, if they're old enough to read and they're they can, I have one for those too, talk with the child about it. Saying, wow, this is where you're at. This is your love language. Wow, a couple years ago, you wanted this, and now it's changed for you. Because when they go from like 9 and 10 to 15, 16, there's some changes going on. And the love tank's going to change a little bit. So if you've done them with your kids in the past, maybe just remember where they were at, years ago. Yeah? Do you have a question? You did one today? What? Do you know what yours was? No? No? All right. Well, so I was going to hand these out while Mark chats a little bit.
I have another. Yeah. Here's an example with Don was talking about our oldest son Darren. He, he's done quite a few different jobs. One of them, he did floors for quite a while. Right now, he's doing more like general construction, and so he came and helped us put in our floor, and it came out really nice. And he did one room in particular that I didn't even walk in. I didn't even walk in that back room. He did the whole entire thing. I didn't even walk in it to help or assist. I was just working on other parts of it. And then he, of course, helped with other parts as well. My compliment that I made was, I didn't even go in that room. And I meant it as a compliment. Now, here's what happened is he kind of took it as, yeah, but I did more than that room. And I was like, oh, bummer. And so this is something right now, as I talk, that I'm thinking of the next time I see him and talk to him, how I want to make sure he understands the complementary nature of what I was referring to. This is something that's important. And so this is the kind of things that you learn of being intentional, of making a conscious effort to speak to somebody's love language. It's not always easy or simple. And I think for some of us, recognizing where we might have, messed up is, a good way to learn. That's how I learn a lot of things. You mess something up 2-3 times, you probably might not have a fourth. You never know. Some of us it takes a few times. The other thing I want to mention too when taking this quiz, what it typically does is it gives you 2 choices on that, and they don't always exactly apply. And I found myself being like wanting to put my own parameters on it. Well, do you like to hug your wife, or would you rather get a gift from her? Well, I like both. Right? That type of thing. And so it's like just going through and picking one and not getting too into every little detail of each of the questions. It's like, okay, in these scenarios, which is it? Which would I prefer? Let's go with one. And then, of course, you add them up at the end. And yeah, the results, the other thing Dawn was saying is they tend to change over time. I find that what was mine? Quality time came up in my rating over the past 13 years that we've been married. That did change. I find that interesting. I actually spend a lot less time hunting now. Not that it's a problem. It's all good, But having quality time is now more important. And like I said, just yesterday when we were discussing her paper, that was quality time. It wasn't that we were just sitting in a room and we're going to get into more of these specific love languages, but not just sitting in the vicinity of each other, but actually having this interaction and having a real conversation. It was kind of nice. I'll tell you another thing we're working on is with our grandchildren, because now we're building the house and it takes up all of our extra time, all the things we do, and then we want the grandkids on the weekends. But we realized, well, wait a minute, we have not had a whole lot of one-on-one time. It's like, wow, we were going to have to fit that in there somewhere to have that quality time. And then it kind of showed up a little bit yesterday. And then we went and saw the grandkids. Yeah. It was exciting. All right, did we get those all passed out? So, yeah, any questions? Yes.
Just say you have a boss that you think is a jerk. You can't give him a test. So, you don't even want to be around. You don't even want to talk to him.
But do you have a boss? No. Okay, so if you have a boss that you can't give a test to, right, you're not going to necessarily give them a test. It's more on that observing someone else, because we're not going to give the test to anyone, right? We take it ourselves. But it's about observing folks, our interactions, and listening and paying attention to what it is they're looking for. And the other thing I would say that goes along with that is praying and asking God for a little help and a little discernment in doing that. And a lot of times, He can enlighten us to move in the direction of finding out what somebody else's love language is.
Did everybody get what?
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
I was just going to say, this is more an observation, just talking about the word of affirmation. I feel like we've done it a couple times with our kids, and that's lovely with kids. But words of affirmation, I feel like we've experienced that when your kids, have other things like quality time or acts of service, it feels slightly stressful, right? As parents, we're like running around, we're like, when are we going to have time to have quality time? But those are love things. But words of affirmation, our son is words of affirmation, and it is honestly like the easiest thing. I remember when we did it, I was like 11 light went off, and I was like, this is so easy. This takes no time. It takes words, like 5 seconds to have him walk in the door, and when I saw that he got a good grade, for our parent portal, be like, oh, buddy, so I got a good grade on your test today, and his little face will just light up and be like, yeah, I did. And it's just the easiest one to kind of take the time to recognize that it's just words. If you put in 5 seconds of thought of just saying words, you make a kid's whole day.
Absolutely. That's a great example. That is a great example. That is the kind of thing that we are looking for and being conscious of, to take those opportunities. That's important.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
No questions? Once, twice? All right. Maybe we will close in a prayer. All right, Lord, we just come before you and we just thank you so much that we have the opportunity to talk about this, talk about our relationships. We ask that you would, touch our hearts and our minds to be open to it, to have a mind more like you, that we can hear from others, that we pay attention to others, and that we are intentional in our relationships, so that what folks will see is your love and grace on us reflected to them, and that they would have good relationships with us and also with you. Lord, we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.